Thank you very much, everybody. So I would like to start off by talking about the subject. And the subject, of course, is secession and nullification, the breaking up of government. And the good news is it's going to happen. Amen. It's happening. And it's not going to be because there will be enough people in the U.S. Congress to legislate it. It won't happen. It'll be de facto. You'll have a gold standard when the paper standard fails, and we're getting awfully close to that. And people will have to resort to taking care of themselves. So when conditions break down, there's going to be an alternative. And I think that's what we're witnessing. I think the 20th century has been a fantastic century to prove so many things that went badly. For instance, Nazism and communism and fascism. Total failure. I mean, who's going to get up and talk and say, okay, let's start a communist system? Well, they could have talked to Mises in 1912. He'd have told them it wasn't going to work anyway. But they tried it out. They had the experimentation with it, and they killed millions of people, and there's a total failure. And the evidence is out there. So this to me is, we've seen this happen. To me, this is very, very good news. At the same time, what we're currently witnessing is the failure of Keynesian interventionist planned economies associated with a Federal Reserve System, and that too will end. So I think we live in an age which I consider an end of an era that has made all these trials and tribulations. And I see it historically over a longer period of time, because I think tyranny has been around a long time. A lot of times when they will criticize me or people like you who believe in liberty, you want to go back to the dark ages. They want to regress. And it's exactly the opposite. The people who object to what we believe in want to go back to the dark ages of tyranny and huge government and tyrants and kings and pharaohs and the people who want to control our lives. And that is, I think that's over and done with. And today we see so many non-government entities that have gained control. One example I see today that I think is so dramatic. We have now the biggest concern of the whole world is ISIS. Well, where do they live? What country are they from? Do they own the Soviet Empire now or what? Well, they got a hunk of land over there, but all of a sudden ISIS is the biggest threat to all the world. And we have to do whatever is necessary. And here ISIS is centrally located around that area of Iraq and Syria. And they have a few thousand people involved, and they are ruthless and terrible, terrible people. But at the same time, if you look at around that area, you have nuclear weapons all over the place. The Russians have nuclear weapons. United States, Israel has nuclear weapons. Pakistan, India, all these nuclear weapons, and they're totally helpless in dealing with this. And I think this is telling us that the old-fashioned organization of the government and the state is very, very weak, and that what has gained strength is the countries and the movements that are dealing with ideas and getting people to support things. Unfortunately, ISIS is getting support from a lot of people, and they couldn't exist without the support of the local people, but it also means that they have had a tremendous impact without first becoming a huge government. And I think this is, a sign of the times. And we're going to see this continue because the economic policies are going to fail. We're in the middle of that. And, of course, the foreign policy is failing too. Right now, United States policy has decided, yes, we have to get them. We have to get these guys, and we have to have this war on terrorism. But we don't want to get hurt, and somebody we'll get other people. That's the change in policy. Bush was willing to send hundreds of thousands of people over there and kill hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to solve this problem. It was a total failure. So now, we'll use other people. They have to cooperate and participate. I predict that policy is not going to to work. And unless we can combat the ideology that motivates the radicals, the ISIS, there can't be a victory. But the whole thing is it's understanding the relationship those who want to and do commit terrorist type of activities and who do make attempts to come here to kill Americans and kill Americans wherever they can go. And Jeff mentioned about the Giuliani moment, and I'll tell you what, as the years have gone on, to me personally, it becomes more and more significant of trying to understand this, because right now we've had this debate in the public, and I was in the middle of some of that about what was going on in France and the individuals that were killed, and all of a sudden, they're trying to figure out why. Well, it can't be foreign policy, and it's crucial that it's not foreign policy, because it blows their whole cover for everything they've done for maybe 20 or 30 years in the Middle East, if not longer. It's all justified because they're mean, nasty terrorists who want to kill us because we're free and because we're prosperous. That has to be proven as an absolute lie, or we cannot win this fight. And the people involved in this are quite numerous, and there's a lot at stake. One of the stories, a historic moment too, that brought this to light and helped me to understand this was the history of Pol Pot, how he came into power. Pol Pot, most everybody knows, he was a bad guy, and he eventually had control of Cambodia, and he was ruthless and killed a lot of people. And our policy had a lot to do with that, having that happen. So that people turn around like they do when we make our statements about, blowback. They say, well, that means that you're blaming America on what Pol Pot did. No, that is not the case. What happened there was when we had a president elected in 1968 to stop the Vietnam War, he was less than ethical in what he pursued right afterwards. Because if you think about it, after Nixon was elected, 35,000 Americans were still killed. But he immediately went into a war against Cambodia and dropped 500,000 tons of bomb. It was the equivalent of 5 Hiroshima-type bombs. Hundreds of thousands of Cambodians were killed. Pol Pot existed before that, and because he was unhappy with his government. Probably, he was first a thug and probably a communist, but he was there. But guess what happened? After we did that with our bombs and killed so many people, it unified the people. His 2,000-man army rather quickly became 250,000 troops, and he took over the country. So our policies have a lot to do with it. It didn't create Pol Pot, but our policies seem to aggravate it and make it a lot worse. And yet we still lose the argument so often on national television that blowback means that blame America, to pass that off. But that to me is the whole issue. Is if they lose that argument, they lose all their justification for being in the Middle East, and that would be, a real disaster for them. But the Pol Pot, I think, is a good story to remember, to point out how our stuff backfires on us, and a lot of people get killed. What about what happened in Iraq? I mean, there's even before 2003, when we started the war, the official war, it was admitted by Madeleine Albright there were 500,000 Iraqis died because of our policy. And to believe that we have a policy like that, and the Secretary of State admits it,